Thank you, Eleanor and Stephen, and Xiaoping, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Stephen. So today's topic is very interesting and important for me. In my opinion, Indo-Pacific Economic Framework is one part of the Indo-Pacific strategy of the U.S. If we are talking about Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, we cannot ignore the background of Indo-Pacific strategy. I would like to talk about why the U.S. has initiated the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. We have to understand this situation from perspective of big picture. What's the big picture? I think this is the U.S.-Chinese strategic rivalry. We cannot ignore this important great power politics in Indo-Pacific, especially in Southeast Asia. Before Indo-Pacific strategy, China has launched the Belt and Road Initiative. BRI is basically a geo-economic strategy of China. So China has promised to invest a lot in infrastructure delivery and so on. Traditionally, the U.S. is very strong, very powerful in military force. Therefore, many Southeast Asia countries are dependent on the security protection of the U.S. For many Southeast Asia countries, their economy is reliant on China, while their security is dependent on U.S. So this is a basic situation. But in order to compete against China, the U.S. has disadvantage because they have not invested so many economic resources as China. Many scholars and experts have realized the disadvantage of the U.S. For example, the very famous China expert David Xianbao, he has written one very good book. It's about great power competition in Southeast Asia. So he has made the conclusion that the U.S. must enhance its economic dimension of its Indo-Pacific strategy. Otherwise, U.S. is not in the position to compete against China. So this is the background of Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. We cannot ignore this. This is the first point I would like to emphasize. And the second point, if we look at the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, I have found it focuses on soft part of the economic development, like you have mentioned, standard setting and good governance and climate change. Most of them are related to soft part of the economic development. This is the strength of the United States and other allies of the US, like Japan, like Australia. So this is understandable. They focus on this soft part. But on the other hand, for the Southeast Asia countries, I'm not sure if they really want this soft part of economic support. I think many countries are expecting that the U.S. can invest money, real money, not only good governance. They need real money for infrastructure delivery, like Marshall Plan. After the Second World War, the U.S. has had also very hard situation in Western Europe because the Western European countries had a very bad economy. So the U.S. has invested a lot of money to support the Western European economy to balance the influence of the communist expansion. And the Marshall Plan was very successful because U.S. has invested a lot of money. So this time we have seen the U.S. is trying to compete against China from economic dimension. But if they continue to focus on soft part of these economic developments, I'm not sure if they really can win this competition. I think they need to mobilize financial resources, real money to support the Southeastern Asian countries. Otherwise, it would be really difficult. I think if they only talk about good governance. Of course, good governance is very important. What is more important that the U.S. must invest money, not talk. So this is my observation. Yes, thank you, Stephen. Yeah, you're right. I think both hard and soft side of the development are important. Now China is good at the hard part, and the US is good at the soft part. If they can combine, that will be the perfect. You are also right. US, Japan, and Australia, maybe some other Western countries, actually they can mobilize much more financial resources than China. But most of them are private capital. The US government is not in the position to order the private capital to invest in Southeast Asia countries, but China is the so-called state capitalism. Therefore, the Chinese state is in the position to mobilize large resources, including financial and human resource, to invest in Southeast Asia countries. For example, the China North high-speed railway is one very good example. Today, there is a competition between US and China in Indo-Pacific region, particularly in Southeast Asia's geopolitical, geoeconomic, and infrastructure competition. In my opinion, through Belt and Road Initiative, China has triggered the competition between China and the US and Japan, probably. From the perspective of the Southeast Asian countries, this is really good. That means both China and the US, the two superpowers, are competing against each other to attract the attention of the Southeast Asian countries. This is good for them, and they have now more than one choice. In the past, the technology capital and know-how are mainly from Western countries, including Japan, but now they have China as another alternative source. So this situation is really good for the Indo-Pacific countries. Competition. I think this is one contribution of China's BRI, because they have triggered the competition to provide more choice for Southeast Asia countries. So this is my observation. The great power politics is not always bad. Like what we have observed now, China has BRI, and the US has the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. They are competing against each other. So this is really an output of this great power competition. But on the other hand, they should work very hard to avoid escalation. For example, military conflict. This is bad for all. For both China and the US, military conflict is also very bad. So if they can control this competition, if they can avoid military conflict, I think the great power competition is really not bad. Maybe very good for local countries.